I read a lot of comments here on this channel about how we just need to make it to the midterms and that the midterm elections will save us all from this SHTF calamity we're all dealing with right now. But I call cap. That's not going to happen. The government isn't here to save you. And in fact, governments around the world have been failing ever since the start of this crisis. And just at the start of this year, we've had Kazakhstan's entire government resign. And of course, they ended up in civil conflict where Russia got involved and everything went to hell for a minute. Then you have Sri Lanka's president and prime minister resigning. We have Boris Johnson, the UK's prime minister, resigning. And we have Mario Draghi, the Italian prime minister, resigning. Everybody's leaving their posts. They don't have solutions, and they're scared about what's going to happen when people wake up to what's really going on. And they're worried about the desperation of the masses coming after them because it is in many ways their fault that we've gotten to where we are now. But here in the United States, that's not what's happening. What's happening here is that the USA politicians are preparing to maintain power. They're preparing to maintain control over you and I, and that should concern you more so than anything else, because this is exactly what we need to be worried about and preparing for right this second, based on the fact that they know something's coming, and they also know that things are going to get very difficult here for the average person, and they know who they're going to hold at fault. Now, there's a few things happening right now that you should be aware of that gives you some examples as to this going on right now here in the country, okay? Amendment 447 from the NDAA, or the National Defense Authorization Act, from Adam Schiff, of course, a congressman, basically says this: it prohibits the use of evidence obtained by or with the assistance of a member of the armed forces in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act in a court or other legal proceeding. Now, you have to understand, there's a couple of words in there you need to pay attention to. Other legal proceeding. Now, this is supposedly to protect you and I from martial law type activity where the military comes in and is being illegally used as a domestic law enforcement apparatus, and then we're thrown into jail, and then luckily in court any of the evidence against us is now thrown out thanks to this amendment. But the thing you really have to keep in mind is that one of the major checks and balances we have here in the country is the United States military. There's a constitutional oath there, and there are many servicemen and women out there who would be willing to uphold that oath. Maybe not every single one of them, but there definitely are a large majority of those who would, and they would be willing to go to bat for you and I against these corrupt politicians and the people who want to maintain their power no matter the constitutionality of it. But this provision would protect many of those civilian service congressmen and government actors and politicians and whatever else you want to call them from prosecution during those times, because the military was involved in the collection of the evidence. So don't for a second think that this is about you and I. This stuff is happening now because they're preparing for how they're going to protect themselves when things really go to fall apart. And then the House committee approving the first assault weapons ban in decades. They're trying to push that on the table and get everybody on board to ban assault weapons, which we all know is just nomenclature for stuff that they don't like. And then they're going to try to take what you and I have and limit our access to things that we need to defend ourselves properly, both from foreign and domestic threats. But here we are. This is all happening. This isn't happening in every single country. It's happening here right now because our politicians aren't going to resign. Our president, our executive branch, our judicial branch, our legislative branch, no one's resigning. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen here is more and more laws are going to be put on the books in order to make it so that they can be insulated from whatever you and I are experiencing here in the coming months. And we also have an example of a apparatus of bureaucracy being used against the average person now, the ATF, which is performing warrantless door-to-door firearms purchase verifications, potentially investigating straw purchases, which is basically saying that they're making sure you didn't buy that gun for somebody you weren't supposed to. Well, you know what? There's no reason for that to be happening unless there's hard evidence about that activity occurring. But what's been presented to us here recently is that this is just happening anyway, just because they can. And they do have you on a list. And if you think for a second there's not some kind of national registry based on the fact that you fill out that form 4473 every time you buy a firearm, well, I think you're being naive and slightly mistaken about the current situation we're all dealing with. This is a reminder that waiting for the midterms is not going to do it. You are the only person that can prepare yourself for what's coming. You can't count on these politicians to come in and save us in November because they're the other guys. They're the ones that you want, you know, so that'll be better for everybody. They don't have solutions for what's happening right now because neither do the other ones. Nobody does, because what they've done over the last couple of years is destroy the entire global economy. I mean, that's what's happened. That's why we're seeing global conflict begin to outbreak. And yet, here we are just trying to vote ourselves out of this mess. There is no solution to this that those people can provide for you. The only solution is for you to get prepared and for you to do what you need to do in order to make your family better insulated against the threats that are coming towards us here in the near future. And that's the best you can do. So stop waiting for November, stop waiting for politicians to save you, and understand that they don't care about you. They're going to do what they can do to protect themselves, and then you're just part of the collateral damage at this point in time.